Good evening, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So far, 2 out of 4. Great. Thanks for coming. And take care of administrative issue here. We still got a few minutes. If you don't mind bearing with me. So how's the weather in Sassoon?
Actually, it's quite nice. It's about probably 85 degrees or so. Windy as usual, but it's nice.
I just recently found out that it's windy frequently there.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes.
I'm
That's
surprised,
weather for your allergies.
and I'm surprised there's not more windmills.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there's quite a few on Highway 12. We just came back from Modesto today. There's quite a few out that way. Towards
that the
Rio
one that-
Vista.
12 is the one that goes in the backside of Stockton, wasn't it?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice ride, a nice ride, you know.
Oh, yeah,
just
quite a
when you
few
have some
windmills
time.
out there.
Yeah. Well, the wind is good. I mean, if we can create wind power, it doesn't use much, it doesn't consume much to make power, does it?
Right.
Although I see some controversy on the disposal of the blades.
Exactly.
Go
With the
figure.
birds and the birds also, the wildlife.
Yes, sir. And your name is,
David and Peggy Arevalo.
oh, you were here with us last week.
Correct. Yes.
Well, whenever it was last, weren't you?
2 weeks ago.
13th,
Yeah.
yes, we were.
Yeah. It's David and Peggy, right?
Correct.
How do you say your last name?
Arevalo.
Arevalo. Okay, great, thank you. I see a few new people. Karen, Callie, Mr. Wise, just Wise. I think it's
Yeah.
Mr. Wise, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Jim Wise.
Jim Wise, thank you, Jim. And Dennis O'Brien.
I'm Karen. I'm with O'Brien Homes as well.
Oh, Karen, you're with Dennis as well? Is that what
Correct.
you said?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, it's 6 o'clock now. I just want to introduce myself briefly. My name is Russell Shaw. I work for and with Tim Kim of TK Consulting. He and I represent the lead planners for this project in Sassoon City on behalf of FPA Multifamily. We have a few members of the FPA team on as well, but I'm going to pass off the hostship again tonight to Mr. Kim. And if I can figure this out here real quick, I'm going to do so and let him be the host for tonight. And he's got a power presentation that he's going to be able to present to us. And we have one repeat, Peggy and David. The rest are new participants, as I see. So Tim, it's all yours.
I know there was a couple of meetings and I wasn't at the first. So who was who has not been in one of these presentations?
Myself, Jim Wise, this is the first one. I didn't know about the other two.
Okay. And Jim, you live nearby?
Yes, I do. I live right down the street.
Okay. Yeah, they do those, radius mailings. And so it's a radius from anywhere around the border. So anyway, you should have got one. So apologize that didn't go through. Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here. Okay, can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, so, we had pretty productive discussions, I think, on the last two calls. And so what I'll do is I'll mention a few of the things that were kind of key items that came up just to start with. And then we'll walk through this presentation. And I won't belabor too much of it. I recognize that the presentation that we've provided, some of the things are interesting to certain folks and not to others. And so some of the stuff may, be more interesting and, to the city, certain factors that they want to know that, you may not care about as much. So I'll try and be sensitive to your time and move through those items a little quicker. So when we talked last time, a few of the key issues, we kicked around a number of items, but a few of them were, traffic. We had provided some landscape buffering and the residents pretty overwhelmingly were interested in a block wall versus the hedge for, privacy, security, noise, a number of issues. Like I said, traffic always comes up. Distances from our buildings to your buildings. What type of housing? What, is it low income? Is it higher, luxury housing, for sale, for rent, that kind of thing. So we'll walk through and make sure we address those items and quite a few others. And we kind of track all the issues that come up and make sure that in following presentations, we can try and address those more thoroughly. So you all know the location. Development team, the ultimate project owner developer is a group that is, we consider kind of a family of companies, and they've got a number of entities to where they do everything from design and financing through entitlements, construction, and then operate it on the back end. And I think the reason that that's important is we're not coming in and designing a project and selling it off, or building it and selling it off. We're building it with the intent of staying there, of being your neighbors long-term. And so everything that we're doing on this, we're looking for kind of a long-term approach. So those entities, FPA Multifamily, Redwood Construction, Trinity Property Consultants, that's the operating, sales, leasing, management group. And one nice thing about this project is since it's for rent, we'll own the entire project. And if there's ever issues, it's one phone call and you reach us and, we deal with it. Redtail Acquisitions is one of their entities that is often the entity that'll buy the property. And then my company is TK Consulting, and I really kind of work like an extension of the developer. And so a lot of times I'll say we, because I think of it as kind of we're all one company, but I'm technically a third party entitlement group. And so Russ and I handle the day-to-day project management. The company's well-established, a lot of extensive experience nationwide, both renovating existing projects and building new ones from scratch. And one of the larger real estate companies and an award-winning company with regards to property management. We've got a group of both local consultants and regional consultants that we rely on, and we always try and bring in a really strong team that's highly qualified for the type of project that we're doing. So getting into the project itself, it's about 9 acres, zoned for multifamily that allows 20 units per acre. We're proposing 180 garden style 3-story apartment homes with a mix of different types of bedroom counts and very highly amenitized. This is meant to be a very nice, high quality gated community. And in being that type of community, we tend to have significantly less problems than what you may have experienced with other kind of older apartment communities or communities with a different demographic. So we have nice community room and pool, barbecue and picnic areas, paseos, tot lots. The dog runs are always very important these days, anything related to pets and kind of getting outside. Here's a picture of the site, and you're well familiar with that, but we've got Blossom, which is where our main entrance comes off of on the west, and Railroad on the north. So the project that we propose, what we do first when we look at a project, we look at, what is the general plan designation and what is the zoning for the property. Our goal is 90+% of the time to try and be 100% consistent with the development standards and what the zoning allows. So we try and meet or exceed all those type of development standards that the city has intended for the particular property. One of the big issues in most areas of California right now is just a major pent-up demand for housing, whether it be single family for sale or multifamily. There's been a strong need, but especially for what we sometimes consider workforce, housing that might meet for, police and fire, as well as just, starting families or established families. And that's why we have a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom homes. As I said before, we've got a high quality project planned. Once we figure out what the city wants to see on the site and how they've zoned it, then our primary goal turns to, hey, what's going to work for this community? What's going to be important for the neighbors? And so immediately, in fact, the reason that we pick the architect we do is because he's really great at looking at any potential conflicts with the neighbors. And I'll show you in a couple of minutes how we orient the buildings and try and set them back much further than what the city requires. Because we know, in the end, we don't want a bunch of people going to the podium and complaining and saying that we didn't really think through the design of this project. So our goal is to minimize impacts to you all. So let's jump into the site plan. This is a landscape plan, and I show it to kind of give you an idea. It shows a lot of color, but that's because we have a very lush landscape planned, and that's for the enjoyment of the residents, of course, but it's also to provide a really healthy screening and buffer area for you too, and to attempt to maximize your privacy. And as the years go on, it just gets better and better and more lush and more mature. And we plant mature trees to begin with. I mean, we don't plant just 5-gallon trees. So we try and plant trees that right away start with a healthy size. So that just kind of gives you an overall look. I'll walk you through the site plan in just a minute here. So here's the engineering drawing. So it's a little bit easier to kind of see what's going on here. Can you see my cursor? Yes, okay. So Blossom, Railroad, of course. So here's our entrance. And then we have gates around here. So you come in and the clubhouse is straight ahead. The darker gray shaded area is the street, kind of a loop street system that comes through here. So all of that, you can see the streets and the parking. And parking's a big issue too. I probably should have mentioned it earlier. That's always one of the key issues, because the neighbors get frustrated when we have overflow parking that rolls out onto the neighborhood streets. And so we often park more than the required parking if we can fit it in. And we always kind of have a minimum amount that we know as a company and operating 30 to 40,000 apartments nationwide at any given time. We know how much you need for a community to kind of avoid that overflow. And then we also try and manage that as close as we can to make sure you don't have those kind of problems and that we're not receiving calls from you. So if you look at this, you know, here's our clubhouse, and then the rest of these buildings are apartment buildings. And one of the key things to note on these is, you know, we have the residents here along the bottom side, and then along the right, we have several additional residents. And so what we're doing is we're trying as much as we can to first and foremost create a setback. So the city's setback is only 5 feet. We've got a much greater setback, and I'll show you an exhibit in a minute on the specific setbacks. But we also look at areas like this where we've got this building, and in terms of looking this direction, we have it going, you know, the short direction, and we try and avoid buildings right up against the property line that are going horizontal. So this one is, but it's much further away. We've got dog parks along here and just a lot of landscaping all the way around. Do we have Seraphin on the line, by the way?
Tim, you might have to admit that if they're waiting. Yeah, you're the host then.
Yeah, I don't see anybody waiting. Okay, I'm sure it'll pop up if he comes. If you, hang on, just one. Sorry, guys, give me just 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so Russ, if you could send an email to Seraphin with the same link that you sent out on Monday, that would be great.
I did, I'll send him another.
So Seraphin, very talented designer, architect, and planner, and he's going to talk through some of the site plan as well, but I'll kind of keep moving along. So again, I mentioned landscape before, but we're really focused on special landscape treatments. And what we've done is, after a lot of discussion internally and with the neighbors on the last 2 calls, the owner and developer decided to go ahead and put in a block wall. So where we were going to do a hedge, now we're going to do a block wall all along those 2 sides. And so that'll provide, I think, that extra security. It's great for sound too. And so I think you were all very interested in that. We wrote that down as your #1 request. So I know Russ and I were happy to see that decision made. What we've done too, and I'll show you this as we get a little further in, but we've layered in a number of landscape elements. So we'll put in different kinds of trees for variety. We'll put in kind of layered trees with different kinds so that, you know, as they grow in, you really have something kind of nice to look at and provides, you know, greater and greater privacy. We also have an 8-foot decorative wall along Railroad Avenue that's for noise attenuation. And the last thing is we do some additional sound barriers and stuff for the residents. So this exhibit gives you, okay, let's see. Yeah, I know I've talked a lot. Let me just hit these setbacks real quick, and then I'll take a few questions. And then I think we've got, so Seraphin, are you on now? All right, I'll have to see how I admit him if. Okay, we got a few more folks coming in, so give me just a second here.
Well, there's 16 now, Tim. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Seraphin, are you on? Okay.
Scott's on.
Okay, great. We got our landscape architect on. So let me just show this one exhibit. And for those of you just coming on, apologize if you had a hard time getting in. We've just basically walked through some elements of the site plan, and that's probably the only part you care about that I talked about. And we talked about, the lush landscaping we're providing, high level of amenities, a project that's consistent with the general plan and the zoning. And then we talked about some of the key issues from last time. The number one issue being requests for masonry wall. We had proposed a hedge. People wanted to see a masonry wall instead. So the owners decided to go ahead and put in a masonry wall all along both of these edges, and wall that would meet city standards. So we've committed to that and have notified the city of that. And I had just was talking through some of the amenities, but here's the engineered site plan. It's a gated community, a very nice community. And you enter on this side, we've got the clubhouse here. The dark gray is the parking and circulation. And we were talking about the greatly extended setbacks. So as I said before, the setbacks are 5 feet, a minimum required by the city. And we've got anywhere from 80 foot setback to 109. Probably on average, we're around 100 foot setback from the neighbor's property line. And of course, even further from your homes. So with that, I know we had a few questions. Let me see here if I can see whose hands are up. Do you want to start with Peggy?
Yeah, Tim. So we're glad that developer decided the masonry, the brick wall, the height. Do you know? You did mention something about what the city, or do we know?
Is 8
Yeah.
foot,
Is
10
it 8
foot?
foot, 10 foot, or?
You'll never see a 10 foot. No, the highest the city allows is 6 feet along a residential, and they don't even always allow masonry. And so we're going to do a 6 foot wall along there. And part of it is, we're kind of trying to dig into that to understand it. And part of it too is a safety issue too for public services. So if fire's needing to access from the backyard, they're going to have a hard time, scaling an 8 foot wall. So, and the way we're laying this out, we'll have good eyes on that whole perimeter there. So I think it provides security and a solid wall on there.
So they would not allow the 8 foot similar to the one on Railroad? The 8?
No, sir.
No.
So Railroad, they had to, and it's along a major street, and they needed it for the sound attenuation. So there was no choice. But from between residents and for a backyard type wall, 6 foot's as high as they could go. So I know some of you have 8 foot fences, and maybe you kind of get away with leaving that. But for the wall we're putting in, we can't do more than 6.
Excuse me, Tim, to interrupt. Seraphin's in the waiting room, if you can allow him in.
Thanks, Russ. Welcome, Seraphin. I'll turn it over to you when we get to the architecture, and then I'll turn it over to Scott with the landscape. Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah. So there's only one main entrance off of Blossom.
Correct. And then we have something a little bit unique. We've got 2 emergency vehicle exits, and that's rare. I don't think I've ever seen 2 before, but it provides a little quicker access for emergency vehicles. So those access points are right down here in the lower end of the screen, as you can see, and then one onto Railroad.
Okay.
The way Railroad works and the design of that, and the access is problematic to come off a Railroad. And based on the size project, the one main entrance was supported by the city.
And so the gates are inside closer to the clubhouse there? They're not off of Blossom?
Right, so there's plenty of queuing. So it doesn't back up onto Blossom.
Okay. And
The gate-
then,
I'm sorry, Jim. The gates are, you have free access to the clubhouse and yeah, the gates are right where Tim's showing there.
yeah, okay. As far as the road, the Blossom, the road itself, and that you will be repaving that portion of it, and will you put a sidewalk on the other side
Right,
of Blossom?
right. I think, Russ, do you know how that's written up? So I know we're doing a lot of improvements along here in terms of walkways and whatnot, but there's already a sidewalk right here.
Yeah, I'm talking on the other side of Blossom.
No, Jim, we'll be
Oh, across the
improving
street?
we'll be improving the intersection with a overlay or a grind and overlay. But one of the conditions, there wasn't a condition of approval to put a sidewalk on the west side of
Okay.
Blossom. But we'll be improving our frontage along Blossom and on Railroad. We're putting in a rather wide pathway that's a hybrid for pedestrians as well as bicycles. And we're
Okay.
also, and built into that integrally is a drainage device, concrete drainage improvement that will allow the drainage to
Yeah,
work more effectively along that frontage instead of having it just be a series of pools.
yeah, it does flood in that, so, well, that's good to know.
Very good.
So, yeah. Okay, and I know landscaping, you're gonna have somebody come on later.
Yes,
Okay.
I think
How
you'll be happy
many,
with the landscaping.
how many parking spots are there? Because you're talking if you have 180 families, you're talking possibly of two vehicles per family if you have two working adults. So what are you talking parking wise in that so that it doesn't overflow onto residential streets?
Well, Jim, there's 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units. If I
Well,
recall.
one bedroom could still have two people living in it.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to dispute that, but there's probably a law of averages in regards to that. And so I believe we have in the neighborhood of close to 300 parking stalls for the project overall, including we're going to have spaces available for electric vehicles as well.
This isn't your bag.
And Russ, if you could look that up kind of while we're going through, that could be
Of course,
helpful.
of course, but I think it's 287, 291, close to 300. I'll look at it.
And that includes for guest parking too, or is that just residential parking?
There's a ratio for guests. There's a ratio in the code for single bedroom, double bedroom, and
Okay.
3-bedroom. So we're compliant. We exceed the compliance with the code.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now.
Okay, thanks, Jim. And then you don't quite look like Natasha, but I show you as Natasha's iPad.
Yes, I live here on Amber Street, and I was wondering about this emergency access gate that's around the corner here on the dead end. That's
Right.
going to be just for fire only, right?
Yeah, it's a gate. It's a locked gate. Nobody goes through that unless it's emergency vehicles for, in the case of an emergency. So,
So fire department, police department, ambulance.
correct.
No residents at all will have access because we don't want our street blocked with cars. People got to walk around and open the gate and go into the apartment building. There's a lot of kids that live on the street.
Yeah, and we hear you. In fact, that was originally going to be one of our access points. And so we were going to do access off Blossom and access through here.
No.
And we just kept looking at it and we just felt like in the end, the neighbors would not be happy. So that kind of goes to say to my earlier point of we look what the city requires and then we look at what's going to be the least impact to the neighbors. And so
Right.
we align to that.
And an 8-foot wall is legal. It don't have to be 6 feet. It can be 8 feet because I'm a masonry contractor myself. It can be 8 feet.
Yeah, I don't know if you've looked at city code, but we've spent a fair amount of time looking at that. And most cities really don't like those huge walls. And actually, quite frankly, when we end up, we've been in the same discussion on other projects too, not too much, but it comes up. And what's interesting is we kind of talk to different neighbors. Some neighbors like bigger is better, and other neighbors, as you kind of think about what that looks like, looking out your back and looking at this massive wall versus a wall with tree hedge and stuff like that, we end up with a real mix. Some people want it bigger, some people want it smaller.
Well, I think I can speak for everybody that lives here on Amber Street. We bought these homes in 2015, brand new. And they told us when we bought these homes that they was gonna put a wall up when they was gonna put houses over there. And the wall can be 8 feet. Everybody on this block would love to have an 8-foot wall. We don't want people jumping over a 6-foot wall when we gone home or gone to work and people breaking in our houses. That's not gonna be nice at all, man. So an 8-foot wall would be perfect. If the fire
Absolutely.
department need to get in, I'll throw a ladder over for them so they can get over. But I would prefer, and I would think I'll speak for everybody on Amber Street and Lois Lane, an 8-foot wall would be perfect. We prefer to look at an 8-foot wall than look over at the apartments and people looking over at us and throwing bottles or throwing whatever they want to do over the wall. 8 foot would be much better. We pay a lot of property taxes around here, man, a lot. So, they could put that in the budget for an 8-foot wall, I think.
Let me chime in here. Your name's not Natasha, obviously. What is your name?
No, I'm Ray. I'm her
Ray.
husband. I'm on
Okay.
her iPad because mine's is dead, so I'm using hers.
Okay. First off, if you notice, we don't have any culture, we don't have any occupation for the entire length between Blossom Road and Amber Drive. We don't, other than the clubhouse, which is more maintenance related on that south end, we have no, there's a large retention basin that's between the pool and your property line. And on building number 7 and building number 1, we put on the end caps, Ray, we put windows that were high transom windows that the residents can't see out of. It only lets light into their units. And there's no community areas adjacent to that south boundary at all. So there'd be no reason for people to be congregating into the retention basin. And there's no way these buildings facing your Amber Drive, the back of your residents, can see your residents because we have the high windows. So
Well,
I think
we're not really
we-
concerned about the high windows. We just don't want people jumping over the 6-foot wall into our homes.
Well, the
If you
code's
go to
quite-
any apartment building at night, that's when crime goes on, is at night. You can say all you want in the daytime, it looks beautiful and everything. Come by about 10 o'clock at night when things are really going on in the real world, not in the contractor's world, but in the real world. We pay a lot of property taxes for these homes.
light at night.
Okay, so Ray, we hear you, and we've noted that down. Appreciate that. Michelle, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi, my name is Michelle Chavez. I live on Humphrey Drive, and I have already written about my very grave concerns about this being installed. First of all, being the junkyard that's on the corner of Railroad and Blossom, which is always a hot topic in this city. And I'm also not seeing how logistically this sidewalk's going to go in on a very narrow Railroad Avenue. The left-hand side there, the westbound lane, the 2 lanes are narrow in general, and it's kind of treacherous for walking. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out how you're going to widen. You're going to have to widen Railroad Avenue to get that sidewalk in. And it's all a ditch over there on that west side. I've picked enough garbage up in this area to know. I happen to agree with the other residents about the crime element. It's just a fact. I live on Humphrey. I've got 2 complexes here at the end of the street. And I tell you, we've got calls going on, mostly police. And I've been told by real estate agents, the fact that I have complexes at the end of my street, it hurts my property value.
Mm-hmm.
And I am in absolute agreement with the other residents there on Blossom Avenue. I picked up enough garbage on that street. Now you're gonna have what I have on Humphrey. You're gonna have illegal dumping. You're gonna have the garbage, and you got plenty of it over there because you got the junkyard there and people dumping and throwing stuff out the window. I can see parking issues that I have heard. I can see the crime element because we've got it over here on Humphrey. Everything we got on Humphrey, you're gonna have it on Blossom. These are beautiful. I'm sure these are gonna be beautiful apartments, but I just don't see how people are gonna be able to afford brand new apartments. I can hardly pay my mortgage and it's just barely under 1,800. And, amen about what the comment earlier about the cost of our property taxes. Unfortunately, this is a great idea, just the wrong place, sir. It's just the wrong place.
Wrong place. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I know you guys all spent a lot of money on getting these plans drawn up. I understand the intent and everything, but it's just the wrong place. It's really, I mean, here's the big thing. Okay, you're going to have people in there who may or may not have cars. Okay, so now you're going to have foot traffic and they're going to be trying to get to the strip mall over there at the Sunset and East Tabor. So now we get a lot of fatalities in between Sunset and East Tabor with the railroad. You got a lot of foot traffic going over in the direction of the market that's over on East Tabor because they go in between the chain link fence between the sound walls. I see a lot of stuff. I pick up so much garbage. I have filled up my 94-gallon garbage cans more times than I can count from the garbage on Railroad, Blossom, Sherrill, Worley, Humphrey. I'm out there for hours. I've spent like over 6 hours in one weekend picking up garbage. So I'm out there on my feet and I'm just a homeowner trying to preserve my property value when I want to be able to retire and sell my home and take what I have to live on it. So I'm trying to advocate for the residents that are on Blossom and the nearby areas because I wish somebody had stopped the building here on the end of Humphrey because now it's nothing but dumping. And now you got dumping into the canal, which makes things even worse.
Okay,
So,
Michelle, I hear you. I hate people littering. It's just so frustrating that people don't have pride of ownership. So I'm with you on that. And we can answer some of those questions. I think that's one benefit, again, to having this owned and operated, all of this by one group, because, we're going to want to keep property values high there, and we're going to police that property, and we're going to be walking the perimeter, for trash, for any of that kind of stuff. At least you've got one group doing that. You've got one phone call you can make if there's any issues that you have on this. As to the sidewalks, yeah, you've got the sidewalk on Blossom and then Railroad. So where a lot of that dirt that you see that's off the road, that area is all going to be the area we're going to widen to put in these pedestrian and landscaping improvements. So that will be widened significantly. It's not going to be squeezed in, along the edge of the road.
okay. And there's no public transit along Railroad Avenue. So I don't see logistically how there's going to be bus stops anywhere on Railroad. There currently isn't. And then, so it just kind of goes back to foot traffic.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a good thing to lobby the city for too. And Russ, maybe we bring that up with the city and kind of see what their plans are for, bus transit in this area in the future, which I'm sure some of our folks already know that, but that'd be a good thing to know. So Chris, you have questions? Yep, you're on mute.
Oh, hi, this is Gail and I live on Lois Lane. First, I'd like to thank Michelle and Ray for your comments. I think you represent most of what we all feel in our entire neighborhood. I had a couple of questions. One of them was in regard to the electric vehicle charging station. I wanted to know if it was solar powered or if it's on the grid, because we already have major problems with electrical blackouts in the summer, all summer long.
Yeah, those would not be solar. Those would be on the grid.
Well, that creates another problem. That creates a huge problem because we're already stressing PG&E And that now adds to the problem. Okay, so you've answered that. My other question is, as you know, when you start to dig up the ground, we are all going to have an infestation of all kinds of mice, rats, snakes, critters, dirt problems when the wind is blowing. Are you going to do anything to try to help deal with the infestation of all of the critters that are going to be uprooted because of the digging that will all come into our yards? Because it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm noting this stuff down, and Russ, let's chat about the pests and that kind of thing, because I know we deal with that.
Yeah.
That exact issue in other areas. And I know one of the things we're doing kind of on the earlier side would be putting in that wall. So that'll put an end to that in a hurry. And then we've got requirements from the city, and we do this on all projects, but for during construction, keeping the site watered so that you don't have that dust. We're not allowed to create.
Okay, that helps. Yeah.
Dust. Yeah.
That helps with the dust. I don't know that it's going to help with the critters, because I remembered when I moved in 30 years ago, we had everything in our backyard: snakes, possums, mice, rats, because they were under construction, and it was a mess. It was a mess. So I hope there's something that can be done to address that problem, because I know it's going to be a big problem for everybody.
Okay. You said your name was Gail?
Yes, I live on Lois Lane, 1312 Lois Lane.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I kind of want to move through. Why don't we move through the rest of the presentation? And we'll try and rush through. Maybe you don't care about some of this, but we've got Seraphin on the line. I know we talked about some of these other things before. I've kind of hit most of these. So Seraphin, it sounds like you keep dropping. Are you on? Seraphin? Okay, let's do this. If he jumps in, then we can have him take over. I think, I don't know if you have questions on the architecture, let us know. But what we're trying to do is provide, high quality, current architecture with a lot of kind of variance in the design elements, with the roof line, pop out setbacks, articulation, and kind of a timeless design here. And so I just don't know how big of an issue that is with the residents, but I'm sure you appreciate it being good quality. Here's our amenity list we talked about a little bit, but this is kind of a zoom in of the clubhouse area. You can see clubhouse, pool. We've got a pretty healthy amount of areas for dogs, dog walks, and then play areas for the kids. It's always popular. So this is from over by Amber, and one of the questions in the chat was, are we having a gate, or are we having bollards over here? You can kind of get a peek of that right here, and you can see the wall there. And so that would be a gate, typically with a knockbox per city emergency requirements.
This is the no home barred multi-purpose vehicle with the capacity to take on.
So I'm going to show you a few other kind of viewpoints, and we can come back if you have questions. Here you can see the wall along Railroad
That's right.
Avenue right here, and there'll be like pedestrian gates and stuff to get through. But I think when we were talking earlier about, hey, where are you going to put this in? I believe that, Russ, I have this right. We've got Railroad's current edge of pavements right about here. And so you can see how far it's being widened.
I'll get it.
Yeah, that's correct. There's plenty of room on the south side in the right of way. The road hugs the north right of way. So there's plenty of room to put in that pathway, ample room outside the public right of way.
So I'm going to click through the elevations. There's only kind of one thing that I think you're going to be super interested in. I mean, maybe two, you can see the landscaping and stuff, and that kind of helps both ways. If you can see these windows, so where we have windows looking toward you as residents for the ends of the buildings, what we try and do is have these transom windows. So this is up high. So somebody is going to be able to see kind of up high through the window, but they're not going to be looking down. And again, we're going to have landscape buffers anyway, but it just provides a little additional privacy while still giving them some light. We've got what we consider four-sided architecture where it's, you know, nice all on all four sides. You can see some of the materials here. And then it's a single-story clubhouse. You can see the entrance for the leasing and clubhouse are together. There's a couple different perspectives of it. This is a side looking out over the pool. And then Scott, are you still on?
I am, yes.
Okay. So Scott, why don't you walk through the landscape? And I think just keep in mind, you know, it's the neighbors and there's stuff that's important to our own residents that may not be important to neighbors. So just kind of maybe talk through the parts that the neighbors would be most interested in.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Scott Vollmer with Great Valley Design. I'm based in Davis. Do a lot of work in Vacaville, Vallejo, kind of the Upper Bay Area. I started thinking about landscape at this site with wind and soil. So from the start, we're working with things that are suited to that kind of terrain. We were talking about screening around the outside, east and south. We're still going to have a extensive evergreen tree planting, up to 50 trees, where they adjoin residential backyards. So from day one, we're going to go in with 24-inch box specimen evergreen trees, you know, coming in at 9 to 12 feet from day one. So there's still an extensive effort with landscape to add to that masonry wall that we're now talking about. So none of that has changed. The other thing I was going to point out is some of the distances from our closest buildings to the property lines are 70 feet.
70 feet, that's what he said earlier.
And once we get closer to the buildings, I change it up with a different planting list that works with buildings.
He's saying from the wall.
We're going to use columnar trees right up against the buildings so that there'll be a layered effect.
I don't think so. I'll believe it when I see it.
Building 7, I measured just recently, that is about 70 feet from that property line. So from a landscape perspective, that gives me a lot of room to layer this and get some good fast growing trees in there. Once we get away from the property lines, get a fast growing canopy going around those buildings. The water quality basins that we need for engineering are also going to be green space, in effect. So you see the one below the clubhouse and the pool area, that's probably 40 feet deep across, over 100 feet long. There'll be green spaces, irrigated, and kind of a no-mow effect if you see no-mow turf on slopes around. Then we have some actual active use turf areas within the project, picnic areas. So this is a lot more site space than I'm used to on these kinds of projects. There's some pretty substantial spaces here that we're going to work with. You can see around the entry as well. We've got a pretty good canopy, green space right up against the entry at Blossom. So we'll have a lot of room to bracket this entire project with landscape.
Okay. Thank you, Scott.
Scott, can I ask you a question? So you have these Afghani pines and cypress, Italian cypress trees that are 9 to 12 foot. Nice, thanks, Tim. Right as you plant them. How fast do they grow and what's their mature height?
Well, the Afghan pines will grow, if they're happy, 3 to 5 feet a year. They top out at about 40 feet. Italian cypress, you know, given enough time, they'll get 50 feet. And I'd like to blend them together. There won't be just a row of one and then a row of another. I'd like to weave them together. They're both evergreen, so you get two different shapes of trees, but they'll be kind of woven together and create a wall, to be honest, a green wall. Podocarpus is in the upper left-hand corner of the graphic. That's a really nice evergreen, extremely dense, that I'd like to use around the buildings. 10 years, 20 feet. That's a real favorite of mine around multifamily buildings because it's dense to the ground and it does whatever it's asked to in small areas, probably top out at 20 feet. So we'll be working on this landscape to keep it managed, to be honest, pretty quickly. Ginkgo is the deciduous tree in the middle there, upper middle. Again, a columnar tree, not a big canopy. It's a tall, thin tree that I like to use around multi-story, high-density conditions. Extremely tough, but we can use them in groves. You don't have to plant one at a time because they're so thin like that. I like to use them in groves. Plant 3 to 5, pretty close as a grove on the corners, say, or at the entries. So these are all solid options, and I think the plant list is probably 3 times this.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott.
All right, so Jim, you had some other questions?
Yeah, so along the perimeter, these trees and that, I don't live on the south along Lois and all that and everything, and then along the railroad, and then you have a storage facility there. The roots aren't going to interfere with the wall, ruin the walls of the pre-existing houses, or along railroad. It was not going to interfere with the sidewalks when they start growing, and like here in the housing area, the trees that the city planted, you know, the uprooting the sidewalks and, you know, breaking them all up and that.
So because of water considerations, we're really focusing turf on this project just for active uses. We're not going to have big sweeping lawns basically for no reason. We're going to use them for where people want them. Picnic areas, kids play areas. Lawns is really what leads to a lot of that surface rooting problem. You lay water down every 2 days, you put a tree in that, you're basically training those trees to look for water at the surface. Using drip, and then if need be, anywhere within 10 feet of a wall or a sidewalk, we're going to use root barriers. So if that tree does try to get going sideways with roots, we'll stop them with root barriers.
Okay.
So my minimum setback from any kind of hard surface is usually 10 feet.
Okay.
And on top of that, I've seen real good success with not surface watering. That's what's been a lot of the problems in the past, is just telling those trees to look for water on the surface, and they will. And they'll go right underneath your house. They'll go right into the, you know, drainage system. But things have changed because of the way we irrigate.
Okay.
Yeah, and Scott, obviously that's going to be super important to us too. So we want to make
Absolutely.
sure that's done right.
I think, to Jim, to chime in, your answer to your question on the parking, code requires 297. We're providing 320.
Okay.
And then, as I understood what Scott just said, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, these trees, the Afghani pine and the Italian cypress, are deep-rooted trees. Is that correct?
If they're watered in a reasonable manner and not being asked to grow in some nice green lawn, I've rarely had trouble with them.
Very good. Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Thanks, Jim, for your questions.
You're welcome.
Guys, so that's the end of the presentation portion. We've got a few more minutes here. Do we have any additional questions? Okay, Michelle?
Yeah, I do. So what about residents when they live there and I'm sure they're not gonna, obviously okay, the railroad noise and the view is one thing. I mean, moving in there, they know what they're getting. Hopefully they'll be warned. I mean, because you got two intersections close to them, especially the Sunset area. They mandated to blow their horns or whatever. But there's the junkyard there in the corner of Railroad and Blossom. So I'm a resident and I'm like, oh, great. I got this beautiful apartment and I'm looking into a junkyard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you're looking into other people's homes, or you're looking into the, what do you call it? The storage facility. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, that's the double benefit of the landscape that we're focused so strongly on, is to provide kind of that perimeter buffer. I mean, it kind of works both ways. And so that just becomes a more and more attractive aesthetic for those folks. But yeah, I mean, we don't always get to look into our favorite things. So at least they'll get to pick their apartment. And if they don't like the view, they pick a different one or don't live there. But you know, yeah, I hear you. Sometimes I see stuff like that and I'm like, that wouldn't be my favorite view, but.
Yeah. I know a lot of these new homes now, their homes are so close together. It's just like you're looking into somebody's wall.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, considering what they're paying, what they're having to look at. So I guess, yes, obviously it's personal, definitely personal choice. It's just,
yeah.
Well, and these are all invasive species here, all these different plants. And then the way that they would be watered would be the type of thing that wouldn't, like what was discussed about.
With the roots.
Yeah, the root destroying things like pipes and.
Yeah, and like I said before, we're long-term hold folks, and so we don't want to run into a bunch of ongoing maintenance problems, because those kind of go forever. So, and that's why I said to Scott, I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying, and that's important to us too. So we want to focus on that. I mean, I think when somebody's coming in, and they're looking at a community like this, they're weighing the pros and cons, and they may say, I don't love the view, but gee, I love the amenities to walk my dog and the play areas and stuff like that. So, it's a trade-off, but at least they have that choice.
Is the development any plans to become a community partner with the city as far as interaction to be part of the community? So they would be part of the Sassoon Clean Team, or the Sassoon Adopt a Neighborhood, or Sassoon Adopt a Street. We have several programs here in the city.
Company-wide, we look for those kind of programs, and we have an environmental social governance program, for example, where we reach out and we help people in the community and our own residents and employees and everything. So, we haven't discussed that, but that's the type of thing we would typically embrace. I put a note to that. Russ, let's get our arms around that a little bit and pass it to the Trinity folks so they can see what that is. It's a very professional property management group that's part of our company, and I'm always impressed with the programs that they initiate on their own and participate with the community in the city.
I think the city would very much benefit for us, and it would be more favorable for companies coming in to become community partners. And also, does the company that's doing this, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the name of the company right now, is that there are going to be installations. There's one that's it's actually very much close to completion. There will be cannabis dispensaries here in Senate, and actually along Railroad. One's going to be fairly close. It'll be on Worley and Railroad, and then the other one, I think, but it'll be a long way off, Humphrey and Railroad. So I didn't know if that was a consideration or a concern for your company in the installation of these apartment complexes and things that make the residents aware of. I mean, obviously, when they drive up, they're gonna see the junkyard, that's obvious. But I mean, maybe that'll be a plus. I don't know. You know, everybody has their lifestyle. But
I
for
don't
some
think it's-
people in the city, they're they have negative feelings towards this dispensary.
I don't think it's going to be on our brochure.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I didn't know if it was a concern for your company and if they had an awareness of those two dispensaries.
It's just one of those things you have to deal with in life. But
Yeah.
you know, I think we get to know our community pretty well, and they're just going to have to figure out the best way to work with that and kind of balance things. So, but I appreciate that. That was brought up on the last two calls as well.
Okay.
Elfie, you've had your hand up for a little while. Apologize. Did you have a question?
I'm here together with a couple of neighbors.
We're not hearing you too well.
Okay. You hear me now?
Better.
Better? My neighbors here, I'm together with them. They have a couple of questions. Hold on.
Hello, my name is Charles. I live on Lois Lane. And I want to make a comment about the wall. I have a fence in my backyard that faces your property, and it's 8 feet tall. I would like it to remain 8 feet tall. I do not mind looking at a 8-foot wall. So that's my comments.
Yeah, I know we discussed that a little bit. I mean, I think your fence is on your property, and we're not planning to do anything with that. So Russ, there's no problem with that, is there, that we know of? They can keep their fence, or is there a problem?
No, they can keep, their fence will remain intact. Their fence lines are roughly a foot inside property line. We'll put the security wall on property line.
Yeah, I guess you guys have the choice if you wanted to remove it or leave it. Okay, Jim, did you have another question?
Yeah. When does this project plan on breaking ground?
That would be, Russ, do you have the timing on that? Later next year?
Second quarter of 2022, yes.
Okay. And is there, the power grid was brought up, and that was something I'd forgotten about, but the power grid, we do have a problem with being, blackout and that. Is there any solar planned on putting in here on your carport covers and stuff like that to help, run the electricity for the property and that, so that we don't have this problem?
Jim, yes, photovoltaic opportunities are intended, and they're by code, they're required, if I'm not mistaken, and they will be on the carports. They contribute to the grid. They don't, specifically power up the project, but they contribute to the grid. And so it does achieve the kind of a no net effect, if you will, to some extent. The EV charging stations are just a quick charge or a slow trickle, and in your residential environment, they'd be a slow trickle. So they don't consume a lot of high power quickly, like you might have in a retail environment where they're on their way somewhere else. This would be overnight parking.
Okay. I think that's it.
Josh, yeah. Josh.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate hearing all your comments. We've taken good notes on that. And, Russ, what we'll do is let's make sure that we've got slides at the Planning Commission, and we discuss all the issues that came up and what we're doing.
Are you guys planning on having any other meetings like this?
This is our
No, we're not at the time. We usually do 2, sometimes 1, usually 2. We've done 3 in this case. But we're available to reach out to us if you have questions.
Okay.
if you want to send us your Jim, if you want to send us your email, if you have any questions, you could email Tim or myself. We're not trying to invade your privacy. You just, you could share it with the local planner if you want to, and then he could convey it to us, however you want to do that.
Okay, yeah, I attended the planning meeting this week and that, and they put it off until the next meeting on the 8th and that, but they still had the public hearing portion of it.
Yeah, and if you guys, if you have other questions, if you look on the chat box that I just posted, if you know how to do, usually it's at the top of your screen, but if you click on that chat box and you look at the last item, that's my email. So if you want to jot that down right now before we hang up, and you have other questions, you can send it to me. So it's TKIHM@rtacq.com. So we'd rather answer your questions ahead of time and get you all comfortable with the project. That's why we do this. And, you know, we can't always solve everything and make everyone happy, but we want to get as close as we can. So, all right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate your time and have a good evening.
Yours
Thank
as
you,
well.
you too.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
good night.
And could you